The rooftop bar was a glittering maze of polished glass and soft golden lights, perched high above the city like an exclusive perch for the elite. Alex adjusted the strap of her black cocktail dress as she scanned the crowd, her fingers brushing nervously against the fabric. She didn't belong here, not really. Her invitation had been more formality than privilege, a token nod to her rising status in the marketing world. Still, that didn't stop the knot of unease tightening in her stomach as she sipped her champagne, trying to blend into the sea of tailored suits and designer gowns. She caught snippets of conversation around her, casual mentions of private jets, luxury vacations, and multi-million-dollar deals. It all felt so distant from her own life, where success was hard-won and fragile. These people weren't just successful, they were untouchable. And Alex, she'd spent years building herself back up after Jordan shattered her trust. Being here tonight already felt like walking on thin ice. Her eyes darted across the room again, searching for someone familiar, or at least someone harmless enough to make small talk with. Instead, her gaze landed on him. Jordan. He stood near the bar, his sleek blonde hair catching the light as he laughed at something one of his cronies said. His sharp gray eyes flickered over the crowd, predatory and calculating. For a moment, their gazes locked and Alex froze. Her breath hitched, her grip tightening around the stem of her champagne flute until her knuckles turned white. Memories flooded her mind unbidden. His smug smile as he confessed to cheating, the cold indifference in his voice when she confronted him, the way he'd ruined her reputation before disappearing into another lucrative deal without looking back. Panic surged through her veins like wildfire. He couldn't approach her, not now, not here. Not when she was finally starting to piece her career together again. If he saw even a crack in her armor, he'd exploit it. That's what Jordan did best. Her heart pounded wildly as she glanced around frantically, desperate for an escape. But there was nowhere to go. The space between them was shrinking as if the universe itself conspired against her. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spotted him, a man leaning casually against the railing, half turned away from the crowd. His dark hair was tousled just enough to look deliberate, his tailored navy suit accentuating broad shoulders and an athletic frame. Even from this distance, his piercing blue eyes radiated confidence, but also a quiet detachment, as though he found the entire scene beneath him. Without thinking, Alex moved toward him, weaving through clusters of guests until she stood directly beside him. Her hand shot out instinctively, gripping his arm tightly. "Pretend we're dating," she whispered urgently, her voice barely audible over the hum of conversation. Taylor blinked, startled by the sudden contact. He turned to face her, his brow furrowing slightly as he took in her flushed cheeks and wide, panicked eyes. "Excuse me," he asked, his tone laced with amusement. "No time to explain," Alex hissed, tugging him closer. "Just play along. Please." For a moment, Taylor hesitated, studying her intently. There was something raw and vulnerable about the way she clung to him, as though her very survival depended on his cooperation. Whatever her reasons, she clearly needed this, and truthfully, he wasn't opposed to indulging her. With a faint smirk, he slid an arm around her waist, pulling her gently against his side. "Whatever you say," he murmured, his voice low and smooth. "But you owe me an explanation later." Alex barely registered his words. Her attention was fixed on Jordan, who was now making his way toward them, his steps slow and deliberate. Her pulse thundered in her ears as Taylor leaned down, pretending to whisper something intimate in her ear. She forced herself to relax, tilting her head slightly as though laughing at some private joke. From the outside, they probably looked convincing, a picture-perfect couple lost in each other's company. Jordan stopped a few feet away, his lips curling into a knowing smirk. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence tonight. Alex, isn't it?" Alex swallowed hard, forcing a polite smile. "Jordan," she replied coolly, her tone clipped. "I didn't realize you'd be here." Of course not, he said, his smirk widening. His gaze shifted to Taylor, lingering appraisingly before returning to Alex. And who's this? A new friend, perhaps? This is... Alex faltered for a split second, her mind scrambling for a name. Before she could finish, Taylor stepped in smoothly. Taylor, he supplied, extending a hand. His handshake was firm, his expression unreadable. Nice to meet you. Jordan's smile tightened ever so slightly, though his tone remained pleasant. Charmed, I'm sure. He turned back to Alex, his eyes gleaming with suspicion. You'll have to tell me how you two met sometime. Must be quite the story. It is, Taylor interjected lightly, his arm tightening almost imperceptibly around Alex's waist. Though I think we'll save the details for ourselves, don't you agree? Alex nodded quickly, grateful for Taylor's intervention. But Jordan's smirk lingered, sending a chill down her spine. There was something in his gaze, a flicker of recognition, or maybe calculation, that made her blood run cold. As Jordan excused himself and walked away, Alex exhaled sharply, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Thank you, she muttered under her breath, glancing up at Taylor. I mean it. You saved me back there. Taylor raised an eyebrow, his smirk returning. Saved you? Care to explain why your ex looked like he wanted to dissect me? Before Alex could respond, Jordan paused halfway across the room, turning slightly to glance back at them. His smirk widened into something darker, more dangerous. He gave a subtle nod, as if silently acknowledging a challenge. And then he disappeared into the crowd. Alex's stomach dropped. Whatever game Jordan was playing, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Jordan smirks, knowingly, hinting that he knows something isn't right about Alex and Taylor's relationship. The rooftop bar buzzed with energy, but Alex felt anything but calm. Her pulse still raced from the encounter with Jordan, and Taylor's arm remained loosely draped around her waist, a lingering reminder of their impromptu charade. She glanced up at him, trying to gauge his expression. His smirk had softened into something more thoughtful, though there was still an edge of amusement in his piercing blue eyes. So, Taylor said finally, his voice low and measured, are you going to tell me why we're suddenly a couple? Alex hesitated, her gaze darting toward the crowd where Jordan had disappeared moments earlier. It's complicated, she admitted, her fingers twisting nervously against the fabric of her dress. Let's just say I'd rather not deal with him right now. Taylor tilted his head slightly, studying her as if piecing together a puzzle. Fair enough, but pretending to date someone usually comes with strings attached. What's mine? His question caught her off guard. Strings? This wasn't supposed to be anything more than a quick escape plan, not some long-term arrangement. Still, the way he phrased it made her reconsider. Maybe this could work, for both of them. You want something out of this too? She asked cautiously. A flicker of satisfaction crossed his face. Funny you should ask. There's someone I need to send a message to. Let's call it motivation by jealousy. Alex frowned, her mind racing. Jealousy? Who exactly did he have in mind? Before she could press further, Taylor leaned closer, his tone dropping conspiratorially. We make this believable enough, and everyone wins. Deal. She bit her lip, weighing the risks. On one hand, continuing the act meant staying entangled with Taylor, and potentially drawing even more attention from Jordan. On the other hand, walking away now would leave her vulnerable again. With a reluctant sigh, she nodded. Fine, but don't expect me to play along forever. Wouldn't dream of it, he replied smoothly, his smirk returning. Underscore, 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 underscore. By the time they rejoined the party, Alex found herself hyper-aware of every glance directed their way. People watched them curiously, some with envy, others with thinly veiled judgment, but no one seemed suspicious yet. At least, not openly. That changed when Jordan reappeared near the dessert table, casually intercepting them as they passed. "Well, isn't this cozy?" he drawled, his cold gray eyes sweeping over Alex before settling on Taylor. "I must admit, I didn't peg you for someone who settled so quickly after. Well, let's just say your track record speaks for itself." Alex stiffened, heat rising to her cheeks. She opened her mouth to retort, but Taylor beat her to it. "Careful, Jordan," he said, his tone light but laced with warning. "Not everyone appreciates your brand of charm." Jordan chuckled, though there was no humor in the sound. "Oh, I'm sure Alex does. After all, she knows better than anyone how unpredictable life can be. One day you're on top, the next—" He trailed off meaningfully, letting the implication hang in the air like smoke. Alex clenched her fists at her sides, fighting the urge to lash out. Instead, she forced a tight smile. Funny coming from someone whose career is built on borrowed success. Jordan's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, but he recovered quickly. "Touché. Still, I'd hate to see you get burned again. Some people aren't worth the gamble." Before Alex could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. "Speaking of gambles." They turned to find Evelyn, a statuesque woman in her mid-40s, approaching with the grace of a predator circling its prey. Her striking red hair cascaded over one shoulder, and her emerald green gown shimmered under the chandelier lights. Every inch of her screamed old money sophistication, but her sharp gaze betrayed a calculating mind beneath the polished exterior. "Taylor," Evelyn continued, her lips curving into a thin smile as she addressed him directly, "I see you've been keeping busy. Though, I must say, your taste in companions surprises me." Taylor's posture shifted subtly, his grip tightening imperceptibly on Alex's waist. "Evelyn," he greeted coolly, his tone betraying none of the tension simmering beneath the surface. "Always a pleasure." Evelyn ignored the sarcasm, turning her attention to Alex instead. "And you are—" "Alex," she replied, forcing herself to meet the older woman's gaze. "Nice to meet you." Evelyn's smile widened, though it never reached her eyes. "How intriguing. Tell me, dear, what exactly qualifies someone to keep company with my son?" The word son hit Alex like a punch to the gut. So this was Taylor's mother, the infamous Evelyn, whose reputation preceded her. No wonder he'd mentioned family drama earlier. Whatever issues existed between them were clearly far from resolved. "I think that's between us," Taylor interjected, his voice firm. "Unless you'd like to share your own qualifications for meddling in my life." Evelyn's smile faltered, replaced by a flash of irritation. "Don't mistake kindness for weakness, Taylor. You know how these things work. Appearances matter." "And yet here we are," he countered, gesturing vaguely at the room around them, "making quite the appearance ourselves." For a moment, the tension between them crackled like static electricity. Then Evelyn straightened, smoothing her expression into one of practiced indifference. "Very well. Enjoy your evening, darling. But remember, choices have consequences." With that, she swept away, leaving behind a trail of unease in her wake. Alex exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing slightly now that the confrontation was over. "Your mom seems intense." "You have no idea," Taylor muttered darkly. For the first time since they'd met, his usual confidence wavered, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability beneath the polished facade. Underscore. Later that night, as the party began winding down, Alex and Taylor lingered near the exit, discussing logistics for maintaining their ruse. They agreed to exchange numbers and coordinate any necessary appearances moving forward. It was only when Alex checked her phone later that the true weight of their decision sank in. Her social media feed exploded with notifications, likes, comments, and shares flooding in faster than she could process. At the center of the chaos was a single photo, Taylor leaning down to kiss her cheek, his hand resting possessively on her hip. The caption read, "Power couple alert? Tech mogul Taylor Hayes spotted getting cozy with mystery brunette." Her stomach dropped. Someone had leaked the image online, turning their private charade into public spectacle overnight. Worse still, the comments ranged from gushing admiration to outright skepticism, with several users speculating about the authenticity of their relationship. As Alex scrolled through the endless stream of reactions, one comment stood out among the rest. "Look staged. Keep digging, they're hiding something." A photo of Alex and Taylor kissing for show leaks online, causing chaos. The morning light filtered through the blinds of Alex's apartment, casting long shadows across her cluttered living room. She sat cross-legged on the couch, her phone glowing in her lap like a ticking time bomb. Notifications continued to pour in, emails from concerned colleagues, texts from friends demanding explanations, and endless social media comments dissecting the photo of her and Taylor. Her stomach churned as she scrolled past another snarky remark. Who is this girl? Did Taylor finally find someone desperate enough to put up with him? Alex slammed her phone down onto the coffee table, rubbing her temples in frustration. This wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. The marketing firm she worked for prided itself on discretion and professionalism. If her boss saw even a hint of scandal attached to her name, her hard-earned career could crumble overnight. And all because of one stupid party. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She hesitated before answering, half expecting paparazzi or some overzealous co-worker looking for gossip. Instead, she found Taylor standing there, dressed casually in dark jeans and a leather jacket, his expression unreadable. "I thought you might need reinforcements," he said dryly, holding up a paper bag that smelled faintly of coffee and pastries. Alex stepped aside to let him in, though her relief was tinged with irritation. "You're awfully calm considering your face is plastered all over the internet." He shrugged, setting the bag on the counter. "Not my first rodeo. Besides, I figured you'd take it harder than me." She shot him a sharp look. "Because my life isn't already complicated enough without fake boyfriend drama." Taylor raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. Instead, he handed her a cup of coffee. "Fair point, but we can spin this if we handle it right. Damage control starts now." Alex sipped the coffee silently, her mind racing. Spin it how? As far as everyone else knew, they were madly in love. Not two strangers playing pretend to avoid their respective demons. Still, she couldn't deny that having Taylor here felt grounding, even if his presence reminded her of the mess they were both neck-deep in. Later that afternoon, Alex decided to do some digging of her own. While Taylor made calls to manage the fallout from the leaked photo, she opened her laptop and typed his name into a search engine. What she found left her breathless. Taylor Hayes wasn't just some guy who happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the CEO of Hayes Tech, a multi-billion-dollar company revolutionizing artificial intelligence. His face stared back at her from dozens of articles, each headline more impressive than the last. Venture capitalist, philanthropist, innovator. The man practically defined success. But what caught her attention most was a grainy photo buried deep in one article, a younger Taylor standing beside none other than Jordan. The caption read, "Hayes Tech partners with rival firm after controversial merger." Her heart sank. So, Taylor wasn't just connected to Jordan professionally. He'd been working with him directly. How had she not seen this coming? Was their entire charade part of some larger game? Before she could spiral further into paranoia, Taylor returned to the living room, his phone buzzing incessantly in his hand. "Bad news travels fast," he muttered, collapsing onto the couch beside her. "Evelyn's already spinning this to make us look bad." Alex hesitated, torn between confronting him about Jordan and keeping her discovery to herself for now. What did she say? That you're using me to climb the corporate ladder, he replied, his tone bitter. Classic Evelyn move. She loves painting people as opportunists. Alex flinched. Using him. That hit a little too close to home. After all, wasn't that exactly what they were doing? Using each other for their own agendas? She glanced at him sideways, noting the tension in his jaw. For once, his usual confidence seemed strained, replaced by something darker and more vulnerable. You know, he said suddenly, breaking the silence, I looked into your background too. Found some interesting stuff. Her stomach dropped. Like what? Like the fact that Jordan screwed you over royally a few years ago. I get it now, why you panicked when you saw him at the party. His voice softened, almost apologetic. Look, I don't blame you for wanting to keep your distance from him. But I need you to trust me if we're going to pull this off. Trust him? After everything? Alex wanted to laugh or scream. Instead, she forced herself to nod stiffly. Fine. We're in this together. As the day wore on, Evelyn's interference grew more aggressive. A series of anonymous tips began circulating online, questioning Alex's qualifications and accusing her of leveraging Taylor's influence to secure promotions. By evening, her inbox was flooded with passive-aggressive emails from coworkers, probing for details about her supposed relationship with the tech mogul. Through it all, Taylor remained eerily calm, issuing statements to PR teams and deflecting questions with practiced ease. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing beneath the surface. Every call he took, every message he sent, it all felt calculated, deliberate. Her suspicions reached a boiling point later that night when she accidentally overheard him talking on the phone in the hallway outside her apartment. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but his tone stopped her in her tracks. Yes, I understand the risks, he said, his voice low and clipped. But she's useful for now. Once the deal goes through, we'll cut ties. Alex froze, her blood running cold. Useful. Cut ties? Her chest tightened as realization dawned. This whole thing, the fake relationship, the public displays of affection, it was all part of some grand scheme. And she was nothing more than a pawn in his game. Alex overhears Taylor discussing using her for leverage in his business dealings. The morning sun streamed through the cracks in Alex's blinds, painting golden streaks across her cluttered apartment. She sat at the kitchen counter, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. Her mind replayed the words she'd overheard last night, Taylor's voice low and calculating, speaking about her as if she were nothing more than a tool to be discarded once it served its purpose. Useful. Cut ties. Her jaw clenched involuntarily, frustration bubbling beneath the surface like molten lava threatening to erupt. How could he do this? After everything they'd been through, the fake smiles, the stolen glances, the moments where she thought maybe, just maybe, there was something real between them, it was all a lie. A strategic move on his chessboard. When Taylor walked into the room a few minutes later, carrying 2 fresh cups of coffee, he froze mid-step. The tension radiating off Alex was palpable, thick enough to choke on. His brow furrowed slightly as he set the drinks down and leaned against the counter. "You look like you haven't slept," he said cautiously, his tone light but probing. Alex shot him a glare so sharp it could cut glass. "Funny, considering you seem pretty well rested for someone who's been using me." Taylor straightened immediately, his expression shifting from casual to guarded. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, don't play dumb," she snapped, pushing herself away from the counter. "I heard you last night, talking about how useful I am, about cutting ties once your precious deal goes through." Each word dripped with venom, her voice rising with every syllable. Was any of this real, or was it all part of your grand plan? Taylor's eyes narrowed, flickering with anger and something else. Guilt? Regret? Whatever it was, it only fueled Alex's fury further. He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his tousled hair before meeting her gaze head-on. "Okay, yes, I admit I have my reasons for keeping up appearances. But don't act like you didn't come to me with an agenda of your own. You wanted to avoid Jordan too, remember?" "That's different," she shot back, her voice trembling now, not just with rage, but with hurt. "I wasn't planning to throw you under the bus once I got what I needed." Taylor stepped closer, his movements deliberate, almost pleading. "Listen to me, Alex. Yes, I used you at first, but things have changed. You've changed me. And whatever happens next, I need you to know that I'm not just walking away from this, or from you." For a moment, Alex hesitated, her defenses wavering. There was sincerity in his voice, raw and unfiltered. But trust wasn't something easily rebuilt, especially when betrayal lingered like a shadow at the edges of her mind. "Even if I believe you," she said quietly, "we can't keep doing this. Every second we stay in this charade makes it worse for both of us." Taylor's shoulders sagged slightly, defeat etched into the lines of his face. "And what's the alternative? If we stop now, Jordan wins. Evelyn wins. They'll tear us apart piece by piece until neither of us has anything left." He wasn't wrong. As much as Alex hated to admit it, pulling the plug on their fake relationship would leave her even more vulnerable than before. Still, the idea of continuing felt like swallowing poison, slowly killing her one sip at a time. "Fine," she muttered finally, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. "We keep pretending, but don't think for a second that I trust you." Later that day, Alex found herself cornered in the lobby of her office building. She'd barely stepped out of the elevator when Evelyn appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, her emerald green coat sweeping dramatically behind her as she approached. The older woman's lips curled into a thin smile, though her eyes remained cold and calculating. "I hope you're enjoying your 15 minutes of fame," Evelyn began, her voice dripping with condescension. "Though I imagine the shine will wear off soon enough." Alex forced herself to stand tall, refusing to let Evelyn see her unease. "If you're here to warn me off Taylor again, save your breath. I already know what you think of me." Evelyn tilted her head slightly, studying Alex like a predator sizing up its prey. "Oh, darling, you misunderstand. This isn't about what I think. It's about what everyone else will see when the truth comes out. Your little charade might fool some people, but eventually they'll realize you're nothing more than a distraction, a phase Taylor will grow tired of." Alex's fists clenched at her sides, her nails digging into her palms. "You don't get to decide who matters to him or anyone else." "Don't I?" Evelyn countered, smoothly, taking a step closer. "Let me make myself perfectly clear. Leave Taylor alone, or I'll ensure your reputation is destroyed beyond repair. Consider it a kindness, an opportunity to walk away while you still can." Before Alex could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed through the lobby. Both women turned to see Taylor striding toward them, his expression stormy and unreadable. For a split second, Alex's heart leapt with relief, but then reality crashed down on her. He couldn't find out about Evelyn's threat. Not now. Not like this. "Is there a problem here?" Taylor asked, his voice clipped as his gaze shifted between Alex and Evelyn. Evelyn's smile widened, triumphant. "No problem at all, darling. Just having a friendly chat with your friend." Alex swallowed hard, her mind racing. One wrong word, and everything would unravel. She forced herself to meet Taylor's piercing blue eyes, praying he wouldn't see the guilt written all over her face. "No problem," she echoed weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. Taylor's jaw tightened, suspicion flickering in his gaze as he glanced back at Evelyn. "Good, because I'd hate to think you were interfering again." Evelyn laughed softly, brushing past him without another word. But as she disappeared through the revolving doors, Alex felt the weight of her threat pressing down harder than ever. Taylor unexpectedly walks in during Evelyn's threat, forcing Alex to choose between honesty and self-preservation. The rain hammered against the windows of Alex's apartment, creating a rhythmic patter that matched the chaos swirling inside her mind. She sat curled up on the couch, staring blankly at the glowing screen of her laptop. Her inbox was flooded with emails accusing her of leaking confidential company data, a scandal she hadn't seen coming, but one that felt eerily familiar. The accusations were sharp and calculated, each word designed to cut deeper than the last. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, but the memories came unbidden. Flashback. 2 years earlier, Alex stood in the doorway of Jordan's office, her hands trembling as she clutched a folder filled with damning evidence. He'd been cheating, not just on her but on their team. For months, he'd been siphoning client accounts for personal gain, leaving her to pick up the pieces when the fallout hit. When she confronted him, his response was chillingly casual. "You think anyone will believe you?" he sneered, leaning back in his chair like a king surveying his kingdom. "You're replaceable, Alex. Always have been." Her heart shattered then, not just because of his betrayal, but because, deep down, she feared he was right. Replaceable, disposable. That moment haunted her still, a ghost lurking in every shadow of doubt cast by others. Alex opened her eyes, shaking off the memory. She couldn't let history repeat itself, not now, not with so much at stake. But who would frame her? And why? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She hesitated before answering, half expecting another adversary or nosy neighbor. Instead, Taylor stood there, drenched from the rain, his expression unreadable, yet undeniably tense. Without waiting for an invitation, he stepped inside, brushing water droplets from his jacket. "You look like hell," he said bluntly, tossing his coat over the back of a chair. "Thanks," she muttered dryly, though her sarcasm lacked its usual bite. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about the leak," he replied, his voice softer now. "Thought you might need backup." Alex crossed her arms tightly over her chest, her defenses rising instinctively. "Backup? From him? After everything? Funny, considering you probably know more about this mess than I do." Taylor sighed, running a hand through his soaked hair. "Look, I get it, you don't trust me. But if you want to figure out who's behind this, we need to work together. Starting with Evelyn." Her stomach tightened at the mention of his mother. What does she have to do with any of this? "Everything," he admitted grimly, sinking onto the couch beside her. "She spent years manipulating me, using guilt trips and threats to keep me under control. Every decision I've ever made has been filtered through what she wants, not what I want. This thing with us? It started as part of her game. But now," he trailed off, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Now what?" Alex pressed, her voice quieter but no less guarded. "Now I'm starting to realize I don't care what she thinks anymore." His blue eyes met hers, raw and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "Not if it means losing you." For a moment, Alex forgot how to breathe. His words weren't perfect. They didn't erase the betrayal she'd felt, but they struck a chord deep within her. She knew what it was like to carry scars inflicted by people who were supposed to love you. Maybe that's why she found herself nodding slowly, reluctantly lowering her walls just enough to let him in. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's figure this out. Together." Later that night, Alex received unexpected support from an unlikely ally. Sophie, one of her coworkers and closest friends. Sophie arrived at her apartment armed with coffee, snacks, and determination etched into her features. "I did some digging," Sophie announced, spreading papers across Alex's dining table. "Turns out someone hacked into your work account and planted those files. Whoever framed you knew exactly where to strike." Alex frowned, scanning the documents. But who would go to such lengths? And why target me specifically? Sophie hesitated, glancing toward Taylor, who lingered near the kitchen counter. "It's Jordan. He's been gunning for you ever since the party." Word is he's trying to buy out Hayes Tech, and he sees you as leverage against Taylor. The revelation sent a chill down Alex's spine. Of course it was Jordan. He thrived on manipulation, turning people into pawns in his grand schemes. But framing her wasn't just about business, it was personal. A reminder that she was still vulnerable, still within reach of his cruelty. As Sophie continued piecing together clues, Alex's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, her blood running cold at the sight of a single text message. Stay away from Taylor, or face the consequences. Alex receives a mysterious message warning her to stay away from Taylor, or face consequences. The rain had stopped by morning, leaving the city streets glistening under a pale gray sky. Alex sat at her kitchen table, staring blankly at the cryptic text message that had haunted her since last night. Stay away from Taylor, or face the consequences. The words burned into her mind like acid, gnawing at what little trust she'd managed to rebuild with him. Taylor leaned against the counter nearby, sipping coffee as he scrolled through his phone. His expression was tense, though he tried to mask it behind a calm facade. "Any updates?" he asked, glancing up briefly before returning his attention to the screen. Alex hesitated, gripping her mug tightly to steady her trembling hands. She wanted to tell him about the message, about how every instinct screamed that they were being played, but something held her back. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the lingering doubt that refused to let go of her suspicions. "No," she lied, her voice clipped. "Nothing new." Taylor frowned faintly but didn't push further. Instead, he set his phone down and walked over to her, crouching beside her chair. "Listen to me, Alex. Whatever's going on, we'll figure it out together. I'm not letting anyone hurt you. Not Jordan, not Evelyn, not anyone." His words should have comforted her, but instead they only fueled her unease. Together? Wasn't that exactly what Jordan and Evelyn wanted? To keep them entangled in their web of lies until neither could escape? Before she could respond, Taylor's phone buzzed loudly on the counter. He stood abruptly, grabbing it and scanning the incoming message. His jaw tightened as he read, his usual composure cracking for just a moment. Then, without explanation, he turned toward the door. "I need to handle something," he said quickly, already halfway out. "I'll be back soon." Alex watched him leave, her heart sinking with each step he took. Handle what? Why couldn't he share anything with her? Her frustration boiled over into anger as she slammed her mug onto the table, spilling lukewarm coffee across the surface. This wasn't working. They weren't working. Hours later, Alex met Sophie at a quiet cafe near her office. Sophie slid a folder across the table, her expression grim. "You're not going to like this," she warned softly. Alex opened the folder, her stomach twisting as she flipped through photos and documents detailing Jordan's latest moves. He'd been orchestrating attacks on both her career and Taylor's company, using leaked information to destabilize Hayes Tech while simultaneously ruining her reputation. But one detail stood out above the rest, a grainy photo of Jordan shaking hands with none other than Evelyn. "They're working together," Alex whispered, her voice hollow with disbelief. "This whole time?" Sophie nodded grimly. "It gets worse. There's evidence suggesting Taylor might still be involved with Jordan. Some kind of deal or agreement. I couldn't get all the details, but it's enough to raise questions." Questions. Of course there were questions. Every move Taylor made seemed shrouded in secrets, every word laced with ambiguity. Had he known about Jordan and Evelyn's alliance all along? Was their fake relationship just another piece of his master plan? Her chest tightened painfully as she closed the folder, unable to look at it anymore. "I can't do this," she muttered, more to herself than to Sophie. "I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's falling apart around us." "You don't have to decide right now," Sophie urged gently. "Just think carefully before you shut him out completely. Sometimes people aren't who they seem, but sometimes they surprise you too." Later that evening, Alex returned home to find Taylor waiting for her outside her apartment building. His suit jacket was gone, his tie loosened, and his hair disheveled, as if he'd run his hands through it a dozen times in frustration. For once, his confident demeanor was nowhere to be found. "We need to talk," he said urgently, stepping closer. "I know about Jordan and Evelyn. They've been working together to take us down." Alex froze, her breath catching in her throat. "What?" "It's true," he continued, his voice low and urgent. "They're using us against each other, feeding me false information, planting doubts, trying to break us apart. But I swear to you, Alex, I'm not part of their game. Not anymore." She wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to. But then why did everything feel so wrong? Why did every revelation come wrapped in layers of deception? "I saw the photos," she blurted suddenly, her voice sharp with accusation. "Of you and Jordan. What am I supposed to think, Taylor? That you're innocent?" His eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with understanding. "Those photos are old. They're using them to manipulate you, to make you doubt me. Please, Alex, you have to trust me." Trust him. After everything, after all the lies and half-truths, how could she possibly trust him? That night, unable to sleep, Alex decided to dig deeper. She logged into her work account, searching for anything that might confirm Taylor's claims or prove his guilt. What she found sent ice coursing through her veins. Buried deep within an encrypted file was a series of emails between Taylor and Jordan. The subject lines hinted at negotiations, deals, and plans, all tied directly to her. And at the bottom of one email, a single line stood out. "Keep her close until we're ready to move." Alex finds evidence suggesting Taylor might still be involved with Jordan. The fluorescent lights of a dimly lit internet cafe flickered overhead as Alex hunched over a computer screen, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Her heart pounded in her chest, each keystroke echoing like a countdown to something she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. The encrypted emails between Taylor and Jordan haunted her mind, every word, every implication twisting into a knot of doubt and fear. But there had to be more. If Taylor was truly part of Jordan's scheme, why would he warn her about their manipulations? Why risk exposing himself at all? Something didn't add up. She dug deeper, tracing the email trail back to its origin. What she found made her breath hitch. Buried beneath layers of coded files was a series of transactions, not from Taylor to Jordan, but from Hayes Tech to anonymous accounts linked to humanitarian organizations. Each transfer was small enough to avoid detection, yet significant enough to make an impact. Relief washed over her like a tidal wave, followed by shame for doubting him so quickly. Taylor wasn't working with Jordan. He was funding charities under the radar, using his company's resources to help those in need. And if these records were any indication, Jordan had been trying to exploit that generosity to frame him for embezzlement. By the time Alex returned home, exhaustion weighed heavily on her shoulders. She collapsed onto the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling as pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Taylor wasn't the villain she'd imagined. He was another pawn in Jordan's game, just like her. But how could she face him after everything? Before she could process further, a knock at the door startled her out of her thoughts. She opened it cautiously, only to find Taylor standing there, drenched from the rain once again. His usual composure was shattered, replaced by desperation etched into every line of his face. "Alex," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion, "I know you've seen things that don't make sense. Hell, I've given you plenty of reasons not to trust me. But please, believe me when I say I'm not who you think I am." Her throat tightened as she stepped aside to let him in. "Why should I?" she asked quietly, though her tone lacked its earlier venom. He ran a hand through his soaked hair, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Because I care about you," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "More than I've cared about anyone in years. When we started this charade, yes, I had my own agenda. But somewhere along the way that changed. You changed me. Tears pricked at the corners of Alex's eyes, but she blinked them away fiercely. Then why didn't you tell me about the emails? About what you were really doing? I couldn't, he replied, his gaze locking onto hers. Not without putting you in even more danger. Jordan and Evelyn are playing a dangerous game, and they'll stop at nothing to win. I thought keeping you at arm's length would protect you, but I was wrong. I see that now. For a moment, silence hung heavy between them, broken only by the rhythmic patter of rain against the windows. Then Alex took a hesitant step forward, her resolve softening. I found the transfers, she confessed softly, to the charities. Is that why Jordan's targeting you? Taylor nodded slowly, relief flickering across his features. Yes, they're trying to paint me as corrupt, to destroy both our reputations in one fell swoop. But I swear to you, Alex, I'm not the enemy here. Just as she opened her mouth to respond, her phone buzzed violently on the coffee table. She glanced down at the screen, her blood running cold. A news alert flashed across the display. Local marketing executive accused of embezzling millions. No, she whispered, grabbing the phone and scrolling through the article. It detailed fabricated evidence linking her to fraudulent financial activity within her firm, evidence planted by none other than Jordan. Taylor cursed under his breath, stepping closer. This is it. They're tightening the noose. What do I do? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. If I stay, they'll arrest me. If I run. You can't run, he interrupted firmly. Not alone. We'll figure this out together. Hours later, Alex found herself holed up in a dingy motel room on the outskirts of the city, courtesy of Sophie's quick thinking. Her friend had insisted on helping, risking her own job to smuggle Alex out before investigators arrived. Now, sitting in the cramped space with nothing but the hum of a flickering neon sign outside for company, Alex felt the walls closing in around her. A sharp knock at the door jolted her upright, adrenaline surging through her veins. Who could it be? Police? Jordan? Or worse, Evelyn? She approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. To her shock, it was Evelyn herself, dressed impeccably despite the late hour. Against her better judgment, Alex cracked the door open slightly. What do you want? She demanded, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. Evelyn smiled thinly, holding up an envelope stuffed with cash. An offer, she said smoothly. Disappear quietly, and no one will come looking for you. Stay and you'll regret it. Alex's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You really think money can fix this? It's not about fixing anything, Evelyn countered coldly. It's about survival, yours and Taylor's. Before Alex could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Leave her alone, Evelyn. Taylor stepped into view, his expression dark and unyielding as he moved to stand protectively beside Alex. For a split second, Evelyn's mask of composure faltered, replaced by raw anger. This isn't over, she spat, turning sharply on her heel and disappearing into the night. Taylor shows up just as Evelyn offers Alex money to leave town, creating a dramatic standoff. The motel room was suffocating, its stale air heavy with the weight of unspoken fears. Alex sat on the edge of the creaky bed, her fingers gripping the envelope Evelyn had left behind like it might burn her at any moment. Taylor paced the narrow space, his jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscle twitching beneath his skin. We can't just sit here, he muttered, stopping abruptly to face her. Every second we waste gives Jordan more time to tighten his grip. Alex looked up, her eyes sharp but weary. And what exactly do you suggest we do? Walk into his trap? He's already framed me for embezzlement, ruined my career, and now he's got half the city hunting us down. What's next? Parade us in front of cameras while he gloats. Taylor crouched in front of her, his hands closing over hers. I won't let him win. Not this time. But we need a plan and allies we can trust. She hesitated, searching his face for some sign of doubt or hesitation. All she found was determination, a quiet strength that made her heart ache even as it gave her hope. Slowly she nodded. Okay, what's your move? By dawn, they'd reached Sophie's apartment, where their loyal friend greeted them with a steaming pot of coffee and a stack of files spread across her dining table. Sophie pushed a folder toward Alex, her expression grim. I pulled every string I could without getting caught. Turns out Jordan didn't act alone. He's been working with someone inside Hayes Tech, someone high up. Taylor's fists clenched at his sides. Who? Sophie hesitated, glancing between them before answering. Your CFO, Marcus. He's been feeding Jordan information about your charity transfers and using them to build a case against you. Betrayal flashed across Taylor's face, raw and unfiltered. Marcus has been with me since the beginning. I trusted him, which is why Jordan chose him, Alex interrupted softly. He exploits weaknesses, turns people against each other. It's what he does best. Sophie leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. There's one more thing. Jordan's planning something big tonight, a press conference to announce both your arrests. If we don't stop him, neither of you will ever clear your names. As night fell, the trio devised a risky plan. Sophie would leak evidence exposing Marcus's betrayal to key members of Hayes Tech's board, buying Taylor enough time to confront Jordan directly. Meanwhile, Alex would use the encrypted files she'd uncovered to prove her innocence, broadcasting them live during Jordan's press conference. But nothing went according to plan. While Sophie worked tirelessly from her laptop, Alex and Taylor prepared to infiltrate Jordan's office building. They moved through shadowy alleys, their footsteps muffled by the steady drizzle soaking the city streets. The tension between them crackled like electricity, each stolen glance charged with emotions neither dared to voice aloud. I never should have dragged you into this, Alex murmured finally, breaking the silence as they approached the towering glass structure. Taylor stopped, turning to face her fully. His blue eyes burned with intensity, cutting through the darkness. You didn't drag me into anything. I chose this to fight for you, for us. Whatever happens next, I'm not letting you go. Her breath hitched, tears threatening to spill despite her best efforts to hold them back. Before she could respond, headlights sliced through the rain, illuminating the alleyway. A black SUV screeched to a halt mere feet away, and armed men spilled out surrounding them. Stay close, Taylor growled, stepping protectively in front of Alex. But before either of them could react, a familiar figure emerged from the vehicle. Jordan smirked, his gray eyes gleaming with triumph. How predictable. You two really are perfect together, pathetic and desperate. Let her go, Taylor snarled, his voice low and dangerous. This is between you and me. Oh, but it's not, Jordan countered smoothly, nodding to his men. In an instant, Alex was grabbed from behind, her arms pinned painfully behind her back. She struggled, kicking wildly, but it was no use. Taylor lunged forward, only to be tackled by two burly guards. He fought back fiercely, landing punches that echoed through the alley, but sheer numbers overwhelmed him. Within moments, he was forced to his knees, blood trickling from a cut above his eyebrow. Take him, Jordan ordered coldly, gesturing to Taylor. We'll deal with him later. As for her, his gaze shifted to Alex, cruel satisfaction twisting his features. You've caused enough trouble, haven't you? Surrender yourself, and maybe I'll let him live. Alex froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The choice was impossible, one life for another. But deep down, she knew there was only one answer. No deal, she spat, defiance blazing in her eyes. Jordan's smirk faltered for a split second before hardening into a sneer. Fine, then watch him suffer. With a snap of his fingers, Taylor was dragged toward the SUV, his struggles growing weaker as exhaustion set in. Alex screamed his name, thrashing against her captors with every ounce of strength she had left. Just as the vehicle's door slammed shut, Jordan leaned in close, his voice dripping with venom. "You'll regret crossing me." Back at Sophie's apartment, chaos erupted. Gunshots rang out in the distance, shattering the quiet hum of the city. Sophie bolted upright, her laptop clattering to the floor as masked intruders stormed inside. "Where are they?" one of them demanded, grabbing Sophie by the collar. She shook her head defiantly, though fear flickered in her wide eyes. "I don't know. I swear." The leader raised his gun, aiming it squarely at her forehead. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, with a sudden burst of courage, Sophie shoved the man backward, grabbing a fire extinguisher from the wall. The weapon connected with a sickening thud, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Run!" she shouted to herself, bolting for the door. But as she reached the hallway, another guard intercepted her, tackling her to the ground. The last thing she saw before everything went black was the flash of a syringe plunging into her arm. Alex races to rescue Taylor, knowing it could cost her everything. The rain had turned into a torrential downpour, drenching the city in sheets of water that reflected the chaos brewing beneath the surface. Alex stood under the flickering streetlight outside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, her breath coming in shallow gasps as she gripped the burner phone in her hand. The plan was reckless enough to work, but every fiber of her being screamed that this could be the end. Sophie's voice crackled through the speaker, weak but determined. "I'm in position. Just give me the signal." Alex swallowed hard, glancing at the group of allies gathered around her. Among them were former co-workers who'd been wronged by Jordan, disgruntled employees from Hayes Tech eager for revenge, and even Marcus, the traitorous CFO, who claimed he wanted redemption after realizing how far Jordan had manipulated him. Alex didn't trust him entirely, but desperation made strange bedfellows. "Ready?" Alex asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Marcus nodded grimly, clutching a flash drive containing evidence of Jordan's crimes. "Let's finish this." Inside the warehouse, Taylor sat slumped against a cold metal chair, his wrists bound tightly with zip ties. Blood trickled from a cut on his temple, matting his dark hair, but his piercing blue eyes burned with defiance despite his battered state. Across the room, Jordan paced like a predator circling its prey, his smug grin widening as he watched Taylor struggle against his restraints. "You should have stayed out of my way," Jordan taunted, stopping just inches from Taylor's face. "But no, you always had to play hero. Too bad heroes don't win in real life." Taylor spat blood onto the floor, his voice hoarse but unwavering. "You're not untouchable, Jordan. She's coming for you." Jordan laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "Oh, I'm counting on it. In fact," he glanced at his watch, feigning nonchalance, "she should be here any minute now." As if on cue, the distant rumble of engines echoed through the night. Headlights pierced the darkness outside, illuminating the warehouse windows. Jordan's smirk faltered for a split second before returning, colder and more calculating than before. "Perfect timing," he murmured, pulling out a pistol and aiming it casually at Taylor's head. "Let the games begin." Outside, Alex signaled for the team to move. They approached the building silently, weapons drawn and hearts pounding. Sophie led the charge, her movements precise despite the lingering effects of the sedative she'd been given earlier. As they breached the side entrance, Alex took point, her pulse racing as she stepped into the dimly lit corridor. The sound of voices guided them deeper into the labyrinthine structure. When they reached the main chamber, Alex froze, her gaze locking onto Taylor. He was alive, but barely. Her heart clenched painfully at the sight of him bruised and restrained, yet still fighting back with every ounce of strength he had left. Jordan noticed their arrival first, turning slowly to face Alex with a triumphant sneer. "Right on schedule," he drawled, waving the gun lazily between Taylor and Alex. So predictable. Did you really think you could save him? Without hesitation, Alex stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Let him go, Jordan. This ends now. Jordan chuckled darkly, shaking his head. Ends? Oh, darling, this is only the beginning. Before anyone could react, Evelyn emerged from the shadows, her emerald green coat trailing behind her like a queen surveying her domain. In her hands, she held a tablet displaying live footage of Sophie hacking into Hayes Tech servers, a fail-safe designed to destroy all evidence if anything went wrong. Impressive effort, Evelyn said coolly, her gaze sweeping over the group. But ultimately futile. You see, we've anticipated your every move. Alex's stomach dropped as Evelyn pressed a button on the tablet, triggering alarms throughout the warehouse. Red lights flashed overhead, casting eerie shadows across the room. Guards poured in from every direction, surrounding the group with guns raised. We're outnumbered, Marcus whispered urgently, his grip tightening on the flash drive. No, Alex countered fiercely, her eyes blazing with determination. Not yet. With a nod to Sophie, who tapped furiously on her laptop, the warehouse plunged into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on moments later, bathing the space in a pale red glow. Chaos erupted as gunfire filled the air, allies scattering to take cover, while Alex charged straight for Jordan. Taylor fought against his restraints with renewed vigor, using the distraction to break free. His movements were clumsy but effective. Within seconds, he lunged at Jordan, tackling him to the ground. The two men grappled fiercely, exchanging blows as years of resentment boiled over. You'll never win, Jordan snarled, landing a punch that sent Taylor reeling. Taylor retaliated with a vicious uppercut, knocking Jordan backward. Maybe not, he growled, pinning him down. But neither will you. Meanwhile, Evelyn scrambled to regain control of the situation, shouting orders to her guards. Before she could activate the fail-safe, Sophie tackled her from behind, sending the tablet clattering to the floor. The two women wrestled for dominance, Evelyn's polished facade cracking under the weight of desperation. You ruined everything, Evelyn screamed, clawing at Sophie's arms. Sophie gritted her teeth, slamming Evelyn's wrist against the concrete until she released the tablet. No, Evelyn, that was all you. As the battle raged on, Alex finally reached Jordan and Taylor, her chest heaving with exertion. She kicked the gun out of Jordan's reach, just as Taylor delivered a final blow, rendering him unconscious. For a moment, silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing and the distant wail of approaching sirens. It's over, Alex breathed, collapsing to her knees beside Taylor. Tears streamed down her face as she cupped his cheek, checking for injuries. We did it. But Taylor shook his head, his expression grim. Not yet. He gestured toward the far corner of the warehouse, where Evelyn lay sprawled on the floor, clutching a small device in her hand. Her lips curled into a sinister smile as she pressed a button, triggering a countdown timer on the wall. Boom, she whispered, her voice dripping with malice. Alex's blood ran cold as the numbers ticked downward. Beneath the warehouse, explosives planted by Jordan began to hum ominously. Just as victory seems within reach, a new threat emerges tied to Taylor's dark past. The warehouse trembled violently as the countdown timer ticked closer to 0, its red digits glowing ominously against the chaos. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the hum of explosives beneath their feet grew louder with each passing second. Alex's heart pounded in her chest like a war drum, but she refused to let panic take hold, not when Taylor was standing right beside her. We need to get out of here, Sophie shouted over the deafening roar, dragging Evelyn away from the device she'd activated. The older woman struggled futilely, her once imposing presence reduced to desperation. There's no time, Taylor snapped, scanning the room frantically for an escape route. His sharp blue eyes locked onto a rusted emergency exit at the far end of the chamber. That way. Alex grabbed his hand instinctively, her fingers intertwining with his as they sprinted toward the door. Behind them, Marcus and the other allies followed closely, shouting warnings as cracks began to form in the walls. The air was thick with smoke and debris, stinging their lungs with every breath. "Jump!" Taylor yelled as they reached the exit, shoving it open just in time to see a narrow ledge leading to safety below. Without hesitation, he leaped first, landing hard on the ground before turning back to catch Alex midair. She landed awkwardly in his arms, but neither cared. They were alive. Moments later, the entire warehouse erupted in a fiery explosion, sending shockwaves rippling through the surrounding area. Flames licked the night sky, illuminating their faces as they stared at the destruction in stunned silence. It was over, finally over. Hours later, the group gathered at a safe house on the outskirts of the city, nursing wounds both physical and emotional. Police sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of authorities who would soon arrest Jordan and Evelyn. Marcus had handed over the flash drive containing irrefutable evidence of their crimes, ensuring justice would finally be served. As Alex sat curled up on a worn couch, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth of the room, Taylor approached cautiously. His face was bruised, his movements stiff, but his eyes softened when they met hers. "You saved me," he said quietly, sitting beside her. Again, she managed a small smile, though tears glistened in her eyes. "We saved each other." For a long moment, neither spoke. The weight of everything they'd endured hung between them. Betrayal, fear, sacrifice. But so did something else. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could move forward together. "I'm sorry," Taylor admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "For everything I put you through. For lying, for doubting you, for not trusting you sooner." Alex shook her head, reaching out to touch his hand. "You weren't the only one who made mistakes. I pushed you away too many times because I was scared. Scared of getting hurt again." He turned his palm upward, lacing his fingers through hers. "I don't want to pretend anymore. Not about us. Not after everything we've been through." Her breath caught in her throat as she searched his face, finding nothing but sincerity staring back at her. "What are you saying?" "That I love you," he confessed, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his gaze. "And I know you feel the same way." Tears spilled freely down Alex's cheeks now, but this time they were tears of relief, of joy, of acceptance. "I do," she whispered, leaning into him as his arms wrapped around her. "I love you too." In the days that followed, the fallout from the warehouse incident dominated headlines. Jordan and Evelyn were arrested, their elaborate schemes exposed for the world to see. Hayes Tech underwent a massive restructuring under Taylor's leadership, with Marcus surprisingly earning a second chance after cooperating fully with investigators. Sophie, hailed as a hero for her bravery, secured a promotion within Alex's firm and vowed never to let corporate politics crush her spirit again. But amidst the whirlwind of change, Alex and Taylor found solace in each other. They returned to the rooftop bar where it all began, standing side by side as the city lights twinkled below them. "It's funny," Alex mused, sipping a glass of champagne. "If someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd fall in love while pretending to date a stranger, I would have laughed in their face." Taylor chuckled softly, pulling her closer. "Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. "Do you think we'll ever stop running into trouble?" He pressed a kiss to her temple, smiling. "Probably not. But as long as we're together, I think we can handle anything."